Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. This video is the introduction to a two-part series that discusses our current monetary system, how we got here, what we're experiencing now, the trajectory of where things seem to be headed, and most importantly, how you could protect yourselves and your loved ones in these uncertain times. You are currently watching the introduction video for the presentation series. In this video, we will summarize the entire series in about 15 minutes, giving you the most important information up front. In this first video, there will be a lot of information thrown at you, and you will likely have to pause the video multiple times to fully understand the content. However, please be assured that after this 15-minute series summary, the rest of the series moves at a much slower pace for you to more easily take in the information. The purpose of this series is to empower people, especially farmers, with knowledge on the economic problems our nations face and the most likely outcomes. To propose the solution, Bitcoin, that protects wealth, enables independent circular economies, and eventually will lay a foundation for a prosperous economic future. Most people that meet Bitcoiners normally think of them as people that just want to pump their own bags and get rich, when in reality, those who hold Bitcoin are usually people who understand the gravity of the situation we are in, and are proposing Bitcoin as it is the most likely lifeboat for the sinking ship that is our current financial system. If you are someone working in agriculture, we believe setting up a Bitcoin payment system will be crucial in the coming years in order to transact independently of collapsing national currencies. Thesis: the kind of money the world has used for generations is responsible for the economic problems and most other problems we see today. Our societies are fueled by debt-based fiat currencies. Every currency of this type to ever exist has failed. The money we use today has been a 50-year experiment, and considering the debt burdens of our governments, we are following very similar paths of countries whose currencies have hyperinflated, or lost the majority of their purchasing power. Some examples include modern-day Venezuela, or Weimar Germany just before World War II. The following series summary may sound ridiculous to those who haven't studied the following for tens to hundreds of hours. Please try to consider the following assertions with as open of a mind as possible. The global debt burdens of the US and other G7 nations make it mathematically impossible for these governments to regain long-term balance in the following. You can pause to read. For example, the Congressional Budget Office has projected that the U.S. will be unable to meet their Social Security obligations to its citizens by the year 2033. Governments have admitted to the unsustainable path of our exponentially growing debt burdens, but their job is to maintain public trust in their country's economy. Most economic literature agrees that a debt-to-GDP ratio, which exceeds 78 to 100 among industrialized nations, has a consistently negative effect on economic outcomes. It also increases the risk of a sudden financial crisis where bondholders lose confidence in the government's ability or willingness to service debt without inflating away the debt's value by reducing the purchasing power of the US dollar. The debt burdens of the U.S. are important to consider whether you reside there or in another country, as it is the most influential player in our global economy. In short, Mom, the U.S. government and other governments, racked up too much credit card debt and is soon not going to be able to feed her kids. If she told them, they'd be very upset. Here is a visual that you can pause to see how unmanageable debt burdens can negatively impact a country's economy. Here are governments' options to address their debt burdens. As you can see, continued inflation is the most likely course governments will take. You can pause to review this slide more closely. Note that though governments may also offer digital currencies, these currencies would not be divorced from their debt burdens. The entire global economy is directed through interest rate adjustments. As of September 2023, the United States has hiked interest rates faster than any time in modern history. This could quite easily result in a credit event similar to the 2008 financial crisis. A credit event is where banks or even companies within supply chains fail due to their inability to use credit or debt to fuel their operations. This would most likely result in governments injecting large sums of money into the economy to stabilize these entities. This money printing would lead to higher rates of inflation and a continued decline in our standard of living. Though inflation has been able to be managed in the past, our exponentially growing debt burdens are compromising this ability. Countries like Canada have to keep the value of their currencies lower than the US dollar to maintain their imports and exports with the United States. All roads lead to the US and therefore all other connected nations to print unprecedented sums of money, likely resulting in a hyperinflationary depression in the coming years. It is impossible to predict exactly when, but the exponential nature of compounding interest on debt burdens implies something will most likely break soon. The massive amounts of money printing would result in major decreases in purchasing power of all currencies. This would eventually break the trust in government-issued currencies, forcing citizens to transact through alternative forms of money. You can see how this situation will require a lot more preparation than simply acquiring some Bitcoin. Just because countries like Canada or the United States have never experienced this doesn't mean we are immune from it. It is, after all, just math. With a collapsed currency, many businesses would experience significant difficulty in continuing operations. This would likely result in supply chain failures and food shortages. Gas and energy companies would therefore also have difficulties in continuing operations. Traditional monetary instruments will not be safe havens if the currencies they are measured in collapse and do not regain strength. Again, we know how ridiculous and grim these projections sound, but we wouldn't be sharing them with you today if we didn't hold a high degree of conviction in the likelihood of these events. The reasons for these drastic claims will be more closely examined in our second presentation. This is where things may really start to sound ridiculous, but please bear with us. Bitcoin's programming, regardless of economic collapse, will eventually cause it to become the global reserve asset, then the global reserve currency, and finally, global monetary system. Everyone eventually will have no choice but to opt into it. We all possess deeply entrenched beliefs about our institutions and money that have helped us, and those before us, navigate the financial world we know today. But that world is quickly changing. We are here to clarify why Bitcoin is not so much an inflation hedge, but rather a hedge against the currency debasement that continues to happen for countries like Canada, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Bitcoin is the most revolutionary technology in human history. It is the Internet of Money. Bitcoin's programming will completely transform the incentive structure of humanity for the better. Bitcoin's programming will eventually cause the obsolescence of all other forms of money, as well as most financial intermediaries. Bitcoin is not just money, but a monetary system that is immune from human manipulation, theft, and corruption. To clarify what we mean about Bitcoin being the Internet of Money, you can think about how the Internet essentially democratized the access of information. Bitcoin is doing the same thing, but for money, and the implications of this are absolutely revolutionary. After all of these crazy claims, you may be wondering who we are and why you should trust the ideas in these presentations. There is a saying in the Bitcoin community, don't trust, verify, and we ask you to do the same of any idea offered in these presentations through your own study. We believe that the blind trust people continue to place in central authorities to manage our money has resulted in, and continues to result in, our own financial oppression, both on an individual and a societal level. We believe that in the coming years, this trust will be increasingly diminished as people wake up to the reality that our system is breaking. But there is hope, and that hope, whether we like it or not, is Bitcoin. Economics is a social science. There are different schools of thought as to how to approach the management of money within a society. But this presentation attempts to only offer truths mutually agreed upon by these schools of thought. For those that do not know, our current monetary system is based on the Keynesian school of economics. Our current debt-based monetary system has a complex history, which consists of many interconnected moving parts. It is so complex, it's impossible to say one part of it directly causes a certain economic event to occur, as there are almost always other considerations that contribute to any single event. Economics cannot be explained in a linear fashion. There are almost always caveats to consider. However, for the purpose of keeping the information as digestible as possible, there will be many oversimplifications in this series. For example, when we say that real estate became an investment vehicle as a result of our money not being able to hold its value over time, this is only a partial truth. There are many other reasons why using real estate as an investment vehicle came to be, but it is worthwhile to highlight as it illustrates the value humans attribute to scarcity, which is arguably the most important property of sound money, and it is one that we have very little of with the money we use today. To finally illustrate why you should consider the ideas in this series over the assurances of government officials or economists, let's look at these fish within a fishbowl, and let's pretend that the fishbowl is leaking. Those inside the fishbowl are trying to figure out how to fix the bowl from inside the bowl, or in other words, they are trying to fix a broken system from within the system itself. If these people are not blinded by their own lens of seeing the financial world, they are at least incentivized to ignore options like Bitcoin, which would completely dismantle the current distribution of wealth they are paid to preserve. Today, we will not be the fish inside. We will be the onlookers, who will use a critical lens to examine the monetary matrix we've been told to accept as our financial reality. Today, I encourage you to take your time with this presentation. Feel free to revisit the concepts, either through stopping and repeating slides, or by expanding on these ideas by studying through the resources listed at the end. As a disclaimer, we are talking about the original Bitcoin, not what you see here. It is also important to distinguish Bitcoin from all of the crypto scandals that have hit the news in recent years. If at any time these ideas make sense to you, and you think it to be a good idea to acquire some Bitcoin, you can come back to this video and follow these quick tips on how to do so. We have absolutely no affiliations with any of these companies. That concludes our series introduction. In the next video, we will start with the first part of our presentation series, where we solely focus on the evolution of money and the properties of each kind of money throughout human history.